My guest for today is Peter Teitelbaum, who is a Selectman candidate. And thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is actually my first, I guess, live TV appearance here. I did the little candidate blurb, but of course, if you make a mistake or say something dumb there, you can always go back and retape it. But
that's right.
You know, the pressure's on today, so.
Yes, because you're live and
That's
everybody wants to hear. So, why are you running?
Well, I'm running because I feel that we're at a point in our town's history where we need someone on the Board of Selectmen who can help to bring people together, who can act professionally, who can relate to sort of both sides of the political divide in Wareham, and hopefully bring people together, not only on the board, but in the town generally. You know, I think I've got a different sort of skill set that the board hasn't seen before. As an attorney currently and having worked for the Boston Globe in managing home delivery operations. So I bring a different sort of skill set to the board, and I think with the challenges we face, we need to find people who maybe aren't so political and but are more practical. Mm-hmm.
And what would you say are the issues and concerns for Wareham today?
Well, the biggest one right now, of course, is our budget. We've got a current budget that's been proposed by our outgoing town administrator that I believe calls for 3% across the board cuts for town employee salaries. I mean, I don't know that anything's been negotiated with the unions on this score. Mr. Andrews, having taken a position elsewhere, isn't going to be at town meeting to, I don't want to say defend his budget, but to present it at least. And so it's going to fall to the Selectmen and the FinCom and the school committee as the largest, you know, stakeholder in the budget, to try to come together and before town meeting and have some plans to modify, to bring a balanced budget before town meeting, but understand that under our charter rules, we have to start out with the budget that's been presented by the town administrator.
That's right. It's always his budget.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then from there, we have to go and try to arrive at a balanced budget. So, you know, the more that can be done before town meeting hits, I think the better.
Yes, because then you'll have some proposals to put to the floor.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest issue, I think.
Yeah.
As an adjunct to that, one of the problems we have is raising revenues in this town, the tax base, where we've got about 90% of it falling on the homeowner and 10% of it is on a commercial tax base. We need to start evening that balance out a little bit more. And it's tough in this economic climate to attract business, to find business, but what I'd like to do is to go to other towns where businesses have set up and go to the business people and say, did you know about Wareham? And if you did, what did you hear about Wareham? And if you decided to investigate Wareham, what did you find? With whom did you speak? Was there a clear path for you laid out to get where you needed to go? And you know, why did you choose this other town? What was it about this other town that made it more attractive for you than Wareham? Only if we know what we're doing wrong are we going to be able to fix it.
Yes. In other words, you're not going there to steal them.
Oh, no, no. Well, you never know. There's nothing wrong with poaching. But anyway, but by the time a new business is located somewhere else, then they're obviously, you know, they're there for the duration or at least a while. So not readily stealable.
Do you feel as an attorney you possess some attributes to be a better candidate, or?
Well, yeah, and you know, a lot of people focus on the attorney aspect in terms of litigation and the idea that, you know, I'm going to stop people from suing the town. I mean, that's not really my job.
Right.
I'm not going to try to sit on the Board of Selectmen as a shadow town council.
Right.
You know, we have a town council.
I think we need to know that.
Right. Well, yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, it's not my job to second guess what town council does. I mean, I've worked with Rich Bowen in the past. He's a knowledgeable guy. He knows municipal law. I would see more my role in terms of the experience I have as an attorney in making deals, because every settlement you arrive at is a deal. And I'll be frank, sometimes it is much harder to deal with your own client than it is the other side.
Oh, yes.
Because your client can be just as unrealistic and have crazy expectations of what they should get out of a litigation or a negotiation or a deal. And so I think that's perhaps quite a bit more important than anything I would be able to do in terms of explaining to the board how litigation was going, how to use my experience to relay what we get from town council. I mean, I could do that, but I think the real benefit would be knowing the art of the deal.
Okay. All right. Now, you must have heard of the Westfield project for senior housing. Is that moving forward in the right direction?
I don't see how it can move forward in any direction in this economic climate. We have certain limitations on the project that were passed by town meeting. I don't know, but it's possible that some of those limitations may be more difficult for it to move forward, making it less attractive for developers. But again, as a selectman, that's not something I or the board can do. If for some reason the town's legislative branch decides that it wants to do something, to remove some of the restrictions, to add restrictions, whatever it wants to do, that's their purview. That's what they do. All that happened really was that they authorized the selectmen to engage with the vote for Westfield, the original vote. All they did was authorize the selectmen to engage in deal making for the property. There's no way to order it, to sum it up somebody, to make it happen. We can investigate developers, we can talk with developers, we can say, what is it about this project that hasn't got you all excited to come on board and start bugging us for a proposal form. But the economic climate's got a lot to do with it. You're not going to see developers jumping into the more risky projects at this point, and they're looking at solid gold. When they commit resources and money and financing, they're looking at the ones that they know they're going to make good money on. And so we're going to have to wait, I think, for the rising tide to lift this boat as well. Well,
it's been suggested that we need to get a person, hire someone to actually go out and try to find people to develop this.
Well, that's a possibility.
And we did that once.
We did that once. That's a possibility. The other...
but it still didn't pass.
No, we still don't have a contract. That's a possibility. The other possibility is to try to coordinate with the incoming CETA director, Mr. Pina, and see if he's got some ideas in this regard. Let's get him here first before we spend money to hire an outside consultant, because I'd like to sit down with him and talk turkey and familiarize him with the project, and then see what he has to say about it. So,
okay.
I'm a pretty conservative guy when it comes to adding on to consultants and things like that. As an attorney, one of the things I have to do is especially in environmental matters, you have to watch your consultants very carefully, because it's actually cheaper to pay me to watch the consultant than it is to let the consultant run rampant on the project.
Right.
So you have to be very cautious with those things. So I bring a conservative approach to that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because now we go over to the school department. Do you think it needs to be funded beyond the minimum?
Well, I think first we have to define what is the minimum. Are we funding it at the minimum currently? I know that Mr. Sweat had talked about trying to get a commitment to be level funded, the same as last year. And of course, he found that, I'm sure, tough sledding. And again, this was, I'm talking about the meeting on Saturday between the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom and Mr. Sweat and Rhonda. And I just, no deal was going to be made at that meeting. And I think, everybody understood that going in. Going forward, we have to educate our children. We have to provide a safe environment for them. We have to try to do the best we can to make sure they've got the classroom resources to succeed. But this is, in this economic climate, there certainly are plenty of voices who want to see more efficiency in the schools, and they're clamoring for that. I don't think anybody wants to see teachers laid off, and hopefully we can avoid that result. But these are all the things that, hopefully the FinCom and the incoming Board of Selectmen can work out, or at least have a framework for discussion going forward on the town meeting floor. To commit to something, to try to address all of the uncertainties, right now from this chair, I'd be nuts to try to do that. And I couldn't. There's just too much out there, and too many people have to be involved in doing this. So.
Okay. Do you think you're educated enough from maybe attending different meetings that you can be an informed selectman? Did you serve in any other committees or
Yes.
anything?
Yeah, I've served on the Minor Forest Committee, but I've followed, and of course, through the filter of the media, I've been to selectmen's meetings. I've seen what they consist of, what sort of issues come before the board, how the agenda is set up, and the order that it's in, and all of those sorts of things. Look, you can never know too much, and I'm not going to pretend that I know enough even at this point. I don't think any of the candidates really does, regardless of their experience and background. We're faced with some really unique challenges here, and I don't think we've had this experience of having an initial budget presented to town meeting that calls for cuts to salaries in such a drastic fashion. So I think we're all going into this a bit inexperienced in terms of finding the solution, because it truly is going to require the town to come together as a whole to find the solutions, because not everybody's going to get what they want, and everybody's going to have to give up a little bit. And again, it's almost unique in the annals of our town's history, I think. So would I like to be more informed? Absolutely. What I'm hoping for, particularly with regard to the budget issue, is to find out more from the FinCom as they get into the process what their recommendations are. I think with Mr. Andrews not available when we start town meeting, we're going to have to rely on them very heavily to tell us, number one, how much money do we have, number two, how much money are we short, and number three, where are we going to make up the shortfalls, and number four, how do we balance this thing, and which we're required to do. So it's not about what I know, it's about what we all know. That's a political answer for you, huh?
Yeah. Okay. Then I come to capital planning. What would your priorities be as selectmen?
Well, one of the priorities, I think, is school buses, but we have to hear first from this ad hoc study. I mean, going forward in terms of a long-term plan. I know there's a debt exclusion article on there to try to do some, I guess, patchwork purchasing of school buses for this year. I understand that capital planning does have a long-term plan, and this was something that was worked out with Mr. Andrews and I don't know who else, where we would buy X amount of school buses per year so that we're not faced with all of them falling apart at the same time.
Right.
So that would be a priority if we stay in the school bus business, but we haven't decided that yet. We haven't heard from the ad hoc school committee, school bus committee, the transportation committee that we've set up, and I've heard all kinds of rumors. I don't know what to believe, but I guess from my perspective, if they can't come to a consensus and issue one report as a body, then I think at the very least, heading into town meeting, if for no other reason than to inform us on this specific debt exclusion article, we need to see at least a minority and a majority report. I mean, if they can't agree, fine. Committees don't always come to an end point where they're all on the same page. I understand that, but let's at least get the thinking out there so that we're informed when we try to figure it out.
Well, everything that I've ever heard is, and I basically was on a school bus committee years back when we had to replace the Carpenter buses because the state wouldn't allow us to have them. And in working at that time, we found it was cheaper to run it from in-house than it is to contract it out. And there are many things that come into play for that.
Right.
And they're not going to go away.
Exactly.
They're not one-time things. They're, especially special ed in driving children to certain places. All
Right.
you need is one or two, or even one family coming in that has a special needs child, which is not a problem, and I don't,
Right,
you know,
right.
I'm not unhappy about that as a taxpayer, but I am concerned that they will now put an additional cost in, and if you had a contract, when you make a contract with a contractor to do it, you know, he may give you or she, could be a woman
right.
owner.
Don't sell your gender short here.
That's right. They'll give you a figure, but if there's an extra route that comes in there, that's going to change that figure.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have to look at that.
No contract and no in-house operation either can foresee every single possibility.
That's right.
Specifically because I understand some of our children are transported to Fall River because that's the closest available location for the services they need.
That's right.
We have to do these things. I mean, these are state mandates. It's regardless of what you think about it, it's irrelevant. And it is a cost, and as you say, you know, one child moving to town requiring transportation to a place where we currently don't serve, that can increase the transportation cost 5 figures just by itself for the year. And, you know, I think that it's, again, we need to wait for this committee to come forward because hopefully they've looked at all of these things.
Yeah, that's right.
They've taken into account everything we're doing now, and they've tried to anticipate what we might have to do, which of course is the more difficult task, and then set forth 2 scenarios. What's it going to cost if we contract it out? Estimates, of course, because you haven't negotiated a contract,
That's
so
right.
all you can do is sort of guess at it or look at other towns and see what they're doing.
Yes, that's what we did. We compared other
Exactly. You have to do a
towns.
comparative analysis, or, you know, recommendation to keep it in-house because, you know, we achieve these savings and we have more control over how it's done. So I'll be very interested to hear what they have to say.
Yes. Well, it'll come, I'm sure. But with capital planning, one of the speakers I had on here, which was had nothing to do with selectman races at the time, was Alan Slavin, and he was the chairman of the
Right.
capital planning, and he and another fellow, I think his name was Ted, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
This is- okay. So anyway, them two came in, and what I really wanted to do was to inform Wareham, what does capital planning do? What is their mission? What is their, you know, why are they there? Because most folks don't know. Unless you sit on the committee or you sit and watch the meeting, you really don't know.
Well, we learn about them every town meeting because they have a report and they have a priority list and
Yes.
things that they'd like us to spend money on. So they do pop up there a little bit more above the tree line, you might say,
Yes,
than
but not
normally.
But not exactly what their mission is and stuff like that. They don't get up there and talk that way. But what I found out with that particular meeting was that they come up with a list of priorities, and they have them listed 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what would be their first priority. But it's submitted to the town administrator, and then the town administrator looks at that list, and he decides, which I don't have a problem with, he decides what is first,
Right.
second,
And what appears on the
third.
town meeting warrant and everything
then,
else.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Do you think that selectmen should question that?
Well,
I mean, I don't know whether...
yeah,
I
you're
was
looking
just
for what is the
wondering-
role of the selectmen in that process.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's look, the selectmen are a leadership board. And while they may not have the direct power to affect budget items, because they're not the ones who submit the budget, they're
That's
not the ones who
correct.
prepare the warrant for the town meeting, that's the TA's job. If there are priorities that they think should be included, there's nothing wrong with asking the town administrator during a selectmen's meeting to say, well, gee, we saw you put these things 1, 2, 3, but have you thought about 4, 5, and 6, and maybe 5 is the one that's a little more of a priority from our perspective. But that's all part of the political process. That's, you don't dictate because you can't.
Right.
But you can question, you can ask, and that's the role, I think, of a Board of Selectmen. I don't think they should just rubber stamp everything that the town administrator does for political reasons, or to make his job easier necessarily. There should be some back and forth and some byplay between the two. So I support the selectmen being, staying where they are in the background while those decisions are initially made. And for example, I think it would be helpful if we had, a staged approach to some of these things. In other words, the town administrator comes to the selectmen and says, look, these are the things that I'm thinking of prioritizing, and getting the selectmen's thoughts. Because the town administrator is one person, and regardless of whether, we have somebody local or we have somebody, as in the case of Mr. Andrews, who comes, from the North Shore of the Merrimack Valley, the selectmen are going to be more in tune, I think, with the needs of the people. Than somebody who comes in and tries to do all of that as one person in a demanding job, and who spends a lot of time in an office that they can't leave. That's why we have a Board of Selectmen, because we represent the people. The town administrator is the administration, and so there needs to be more interplay, I think, between the two, with respect not only to capital planning, but with respect to a lot of different issues in town.
Okay, well, those are all my questions.
Okay.
Now, is there anything else that you want to say? You have the floor.
I have the floor for a little while here. Okay. Well, again, this is an important time in our town's history, and I've been, and I'm not going to criticize individuals, but I think I've been disappointed the past several years in how I've seen the Board of Selectmen interact with each other. I understand people on there have different priorities. They have different people in town government whom they may support and whom they may not support. But I would like to see the board return to the kind of, at least outward civility that I recall from when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s.
And your mother.
Well, my mother wasn't always, she was less nuanced than I was, let's put it that way. She was a lot more direct, and frankly, she was kind of a bit of a hippie. She might have been Wareham's first hippie, and she didn't even know it.
Let's just mention it's Marjorie Teitelbaum.
Yeah, that's right.
People are going to remember Marjorie.
Well, they will, but there aren't any other Teitelbaums in town. I'm the last one standing right now. But anyway,
okay.
I think we need to get back to that time when we could disagree civilly. And I don't think it reflects well on the town when there's bickering on the Board of Selectmen. I think you can disagree respectfully and not disagree disagreeably. And everything else aside, the causes I support, the positions I take, that's one thing I will absolutely endeavor to try to bring forth, not only in my own personal conduct on the board, but also to encourage other people to do the same. And I think that's really, that's really where I think it's important. We're there to do the people's business. We're not there to run for the next term. We're not there to throw punches at each other or political haymakers or criticize each other or get into personal back and forth. And to me, that's the most important thing, other than the nuts and bolts of the upcoming town meeting, that I think the selectmen need to do at this point. So, and I
agree with that. I think, when there's the nitpicking public, especially years ago, we didn't have WCTV and the opportunity to, publicly say this, that, and the other thing.
Sure.
And today, in today's world, it's an opportunity, because you're live, to nitpick with somebody else on the board. I don't think that builds...
That doesn't serve anyone.
It doesn't build anything. It doesn't build your respect for what's happening. It's just a waste of time.
Well, it is, and I think one of the things you learn
you can get off camera and then go up to that person and say, you know, you are, and
Exactly.
do that
Exactly.
in the background,
But
not.
it doesn't engender confidence in the board when you
Right,
do it right
that's
then
right.
and there. And, you know, and one thing I will say is I do talk to people with whom I am not necessarily politically aligned in town. You know, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to, you know, get into that. But I can sit down and talk with those people. I have. And, you know, certainly you know, after the conversation, we're still not agreeing on a whole heck of a lot. But at least I understand their thinking. And it gives them an opportunity to change my mind. It gives me an opportunity to change their mind.
Exactly.
And, you know, if it doesn't work, fine, at least we had the conversation. We know where we stand, and we've, you know, agreed to disagree civilly. And I think that, you know, if I can do that privately, sitting down talking with people and not getting into screaming matches, I don't see why we can't do it on the Board of Selectmen. And that comes, you know, look, this isn't something, you know, when I was 25 years old, I would have been completely unfit for this job. I'll be honest with you. I thought I knew everything. Nobody could convince me. Everything was some kind of moral imperative that had to be done or not done. You know, you get older and you mature and you realize that, you know, you don't have all the wisdom in the world.
That's
You know,
right.
there's other people out there that are a lot smarter than you, and maybe you'd better listen to them. And, you know, I'm proud to be an attorney, but I'm mindful of the fact that the reason I'm an attorney is because I can memorize stuff and I can regurgitate it on a written test. That doesn't make me a genius by any stretch. That just means I can read and comprehend and spit it back out to you. There are plenty of people in town who are a lot smarter than me. There are plenty of people in town who don't hold my opinions who are a lot smarter than me. And I'd be crazy not to try to listen to all of them, to inform me, to educate me, and to get me up to speed on issues where I frankly may be lacking. So. That's what my candidacy is about. As a selectman, you're not the selectman for the town administrator. You're not the selectman for, you know, an agricultural interest. You're not the selectman for a political action committee. You're the selectman for the town. And it's important for all the selectmen to, well, at least pay lip service to that ideal when they're up there. So that's what I hope to bring to it, Patty. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Well,
for
thank you very
coming.
much for having me.
I know he has to get out of here.
Now I am stepping off of the grill.
Now you're stepping
No,
off
you
with the girl.
were very easy to speak with, Patty. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much,
Take
Peter.
care.